Welcome to the Operation Dominate podcast with your host from Houston, Texas, Chris Martinez, owner of Love My Clean Windows, Love My Clean Roof, helps entrepreneurs through the Copycat Entrepreneur, helps pastors through the Pastor's Marketer, but most of all, a family man who loves his wife and kids. And your other host from Cincinnati, Ohio, myself, Gary Guyman, owner of Pressure Wash Cincinnati, Christmas Light Cincinnati, Guyman Media Group, and godfather of the marketing mafia, married to his best friend Jennifer, father to Tyler and Garrett. Let's get ready to dominate. Let's get ready to dominate. Hey guys, thanks for hanging out with us on a Friday. My boy Chris Martinez. We got a special guest for you today. We're going to bring him up here in just a second. But guys, we want to recap the series that we've been going over, the Wolfpack series. So Chris, man, give us a quick recap of what we've been talking about, my brother.
Yes, sir, man. So first and foremost, if this is your first time on the Operation Dominate podcast, what is up? We're so thankful to have you here. Hopefully you get something out of this and you can start changing and dominating your life. We started our first series, which was called You Suck. And basically, man, it was just going over about everything, trying to find areas that we suck at. And the last episode of that was going over, who are you allowing to speak into your life, which led us into the series that we are in right now called The Wolfpack. And we started the Wolfpack off with a Bible verse called 1 Corinthians 16:13-14. It says, watch, stand firm in faith, act like men, be strong, let all you do be done in love. And then which brought up the 5 marks of a man, which is vision. Men have vision. Boys live day to day. Stand firm. Men take the minority position in things that aren't popular. Boys go with the flow. Act like men. Men are team players. Boys are out for themselves. Be strong. Men are wired to produce value. Boys seek every opportunity to avoid work, and let all you do be done in love. Men are protectors. We're not predators. We are here to protect. We are not here to be predators, right? So, what we want to do in this series is, man, if you've been in the marketing mafia at all, we've been talking about the Wolfpack, right? It's been something that if you do not have a wolf pack, it's something that you need to get. You need to get a wolf pack. Last week we talked about naming your pack. We talked about accountability, giving the members of your wolf pack you being accountable to the members of your wolf pack. Authority, you giving them authority. Hey, Gary, call me out when I suck at life. Call me out when I'm detouring away from my goals and my dreams. And then put in action, right? Put in massive action towards what your goal is, right? So we really feel passionate that you should not do life alone. You should not do business alone. That you should have, if you're a man, you should have a group of other men that you can lean upon. If you're a woman, you should have other women in your life that you can lean upon. Not just lean upon, but Gary, I need Gary to call me out. Hey, bro, that was uncalled for. Maybe you should have took a different approach. Or, hey, bro, you should try this LinkedIn email stuff, dude. This works. Like, I can't believe you're not on it, dude. Get on it, right? So that's the recap of the show, of where we are, where we were, and Gary, I'll let you take it from where we're going.
Yeah. So today, we want to talk about the mark of a man that is act like men, and in other versions it says be courageous. So for our female listeners, we'll talk about be courageous. But Paul was talking to the church of Corinth, the city of Corinth, which in its time was a cosmopolitan city, right? It was where things were happening, but a lot of bad things were happening too. And so Paul was speaking to the people that he was telling them to be mature, be courageous, do what you should do as an adult. Don't do the things that kids do the things that men and women do. And we as business owner, as entrepreneurs, sometimes things hit us in the mouth, and what do? We revert to things that would be childish. I had a situation that happened. I have a situation that happens every week, and I get to choose. Do I get to be a man about this, or I get to be a child, cry, complain, talk bad about somebody, call them names, do things that don't matter, do things that don't help anybody, but all it does, it'll make me feel good for a minute. Well, that's not being a man. That's not being a woman. That's being a child. And all of those things go against what we want to build up as our character. And as Chris was saying, having a wolf pack to be able to say, to be able to correct, to be able to help you go the right direction, to love you when it's time to love you, to make sure that you're on the right path. That's where we start to succeed in life. And so today, we have Josh Latimer. Josh affects the service industry like the wolves, like the wolves can do to the community. And he's a family man. He's a Christian. He's an entrepreneur. He's a visionary. He's a leader. Josh Latimer, welcome to the Operation Dominate podcast.
You guys are on fire. This is like really intense stuff. This is like crazy. You're like, hey, you want to come on my thing? I'm like, totally, I'll come on your thing. And then you're just spitting fire over there. But thanks for letting me hang out with you.
Man, we are.
Thanks for hanging out with us,
we're excited, right, Chris? I mean, it's something that we've talked about, and we're so happy that you got to join us.
Yeah, I'm happy to
be
man.
So go ahead, Josh.
No, I'm just happy to be here. I don't get a lot of opportunity to share like the faith side of entrepreneurship, and there's a lot of parallels. There's lots of, I compare entrepreneurship kind of like to war, not to disrespect people who actually go to war, but what I'm saying is it's a mental battle. It's a massive, massive war between your ears. I was talking to my wife a little while ago, actually, and I was like venting to her. She's the one I can be totally weak to and be like all panicky about stuff with. And I'm like, this and that and blah, 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 blah. And I said, it's just crazy because Russell Brunson, who I am in his mastermind, I'm like, he's mentoring me and teaching me stuff. And he's at this with a 10X Growth Con thing or whatever. And there's like 10,000 people at this thing. And he's on the stage and he's presenting. And I'm watching him because he's sending these private videos to the group. And it's like makes me sick because I'm like nervous, even though I don't have to do anything. I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. Like, what's the difference between someone who's going to, sell $3 million worth of ClickFunnels from the stage and like just the regular guy hustling? It's like, it's between our ears. It's a mental war. There's all kinds of weird stuff. It's a progression, like if you learn like trigonometry, you'll never be able to understand it unless you first understand geometry and you first understand algebra. And I think as a man or a business person, information is stacked, right? So like you can't go to step 2 until you've completed step 1. And so people that are frustrated in their business, typically it's because there's just a baseline, possibly boring foundational thing that you really haven't mastered yet. And it will never work. It's, it's layered. It's like boom, 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 right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Makes perfect sense.
So Josh, let me ask you. So among other things, I mentioned all the things that you are. Obviously, I'm sure you're most proud of the first two I mentioned, the family man and being a Christian. But you're also an entrepreneur who carries those titles as well. So I want to know personally, in your quest for success, what's been the hardest thing in balancing being an entrepreneur, being a family man, being a Christian? I know because I fail a lot. And so, what for you has been the hardest thing, the hardest struggle in trying to balance all of those things?
Well, I think the concept of balance is actually like a faulty presupposition to begin with, actually. I mean, you can't be elite at every area of your life at the same time. It's not possible. In fact, I think that's what screws people up. Instead, the way you got to look at it is you got to find ways to go deep on certain parts of your life, which by definition means you're neglecting other parts of your life for a little while. And I call it for a season. So like when we do business stuff, my poor wife lives with me and I'm a wacko entrepreneurial nut job, but we have very serious conversations before we do any of this crazy stuff. And so what I do is I try to bring people into the conversation, my kids included, even though they're very young, and my wife, and I lay out what I'd like to do and what the cost is going to be, right? You got to count the cost. Daddy's going to be gone a lot for a long time, but it's only for this long. And then if we win, then this is the result, and these are the people we can affect and help. And then we ask ourselves one simple question, which is it worth it? I don't focus on how hard things are because it's irrelevant to me. The only question that matters is it worth it? Because if it is, then you'll be willing to sacrifice, right? But at the same time, you got to have your spouse supporting that, or the whole thing will burn to the ground, right? So it's really hard. We forget. We have to reset sometimes. I'll have to push pause and recalibrate and clean things up. But if you're going to be perfectly physically fit and become a bodybuilder, that requires an extreme level of perfection in terms of the way you eat and the way that you work your body. And if you're going to be a high-level CEO and you're going to be, super deep in the Word of God, or go really, really deep spiritually, and be the perfect father, and be the this, and be the that, you can't do it all at the exact same time. And so it has a lot to do with learning how to say no to certain things for a little while so you can say yes to what really matters.
It's good stuff, man. Let me ask you this, man, because what we're going to talk about today is acting like a man. Now, I know we have some women listeners, and this can apply to you guys too, but me and you were talking the other day, and you were talking a little bit about what your idea of a man is, like a Christian masculine man, and you gave a story. If we were sitting around with King David today, we wouldn't be doing certain stuff, right? I guess what I want to ask is, as an entrepreneur, as a man, we go through failures. We go from failure to failure to failure. And one of the first things it says in this verse is like, stand firm, stand firm. How do you apply this into your business of like, stand firm, act like a man, even when you're failing? Like, because I know Sin Gym hasn't been the easiest road. I'm sure Birds Beware wasn't the easiest road, but it's been a road that was well worth it. What does that mean in your failures? Like, stand firm, act like a man, be strong, let all you do be done in love, and share that story with us if you don't mind, with the King David as well.
Sure. I mean, I have a lot I want to say about this. The first thing you said is, how can you stand firm but still be a failure? Why do we have this idea in our head that we're supposed to be perfect? It's an illusion. It's a unicorn. It doesn't exist in the first place. Attaining perfection, trying to pretend you're perfect. Facebook's really good for this because everybody puts the highlight reel of their life on Facebook. And then we look back in the train wreck of our life and compare the messiness of our world to the highlight reel of everybody else, which is insane, right? Real life is messy. My life's completely messy. Of course it's messy, but you can set yourself free by stop beating yourself up in the shame, right, that you have for being rough around the edges. Do you think like the biblical heroes weren't rough around the edges? Are you kidding me? Have you read these stories? These people were maniacs, okay? And when I was talking about King David, do you think if we were having like a men's group Bible study that we'd all sit around and cry and say, oh, my wife is passive aggressive, I just need you guys to just pray for it? Really? I swear he would come up and smack you across your face for being so like feminized about it. And it's not about having false worldly masculinity or any of that stuff, but it's about being gritty, and failure is a part of life. It's actually not even failure. It's called growth. When you lift weights and you build muscle, what you're doing is ripping your muscle. That's how you get more. That's what lactic acid does, right? It cleans it up and you grow more muscle. So failure is a prerequisite to having success. Right. I remember when I was 18 years old, my dad said, Josh, you know that like 9 out of 10 small businesses fail, right? And I said, well, I better get my 9 out of the way as fast as I can so I'm still young when I get to number 10, right? So I think like a lot of people get paralyzed, especially Christian entrepreneurs are paralyzed by stepping out or going after something big and going for it because they might be exposed for being imperfect, because the stress of the growth might cause them to snap at somebody or to do something bad, or because they drink a little bit too much, or because they look a little bit of porn and they get convicted about it. So because they have shame and they're not perfect, they do nothing. And they sit there quietly and pretend that they're hyper spiritual, when really the act of being spiritual as a man, to me, is being a builder and being a leader and being a sacrificial leader.
And to go along with what you're saying, Josh, our boy King David had some issues. He as being the apple of God's eye, he got into a little bit of trouble, and he was able to get back into God's grace. But I appreciate what you said, that we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to we don't have to do everything exactly the way that we put in our mind, because that's where it is. It's in our mind. It's not anywhere else where, God, people, no one expects everyone to be perfect, obviously. But here's the issue, I guess, that we fall into. Everyone is looking for someone to fail. And so because of that failure,
I swear I would come up and smack you across
we get
being so
I'm getting some feedback.
It's not about having false worldly masculinity or any of that stuff, but it's about being gritty. And
Chris, are you there, buddy?
Of life. It's actually not even failure. It's called growth. When you lift
Chris, are you there?
You build muscle, but what you're doing is ripping your muscle. That's how you
hold up, Josh. Let's
that's what lactic acid does,
can you hear me?
right? It cleans it up and you grow more muscle. So failure is a prerequisite
Can you hear me, Josh?
to having success.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Right?
Okay.
I remember when I was 18 years old, my dad said,
We're working on it on our end here real
10
quick.
small businesses fail, right? And I said, well, I better get my 9
Guys, bear with us.
I can, so I'm so young when I get to number
First
10,
time we
right?
tried this three-way style, and of course,
I think
imagine that we
a lot
had
of people-
problems. Imagine that.
It's okay.
But Josh, so Chris was talking to so Chris was talking to me about the conversation that you had, especially in talking about King David. I mean, King David was one of those men that hey, he went into battle. He did the things that God wanted him to do to take over. But he also had issues. As entrepreneurs, obviously, we run into failures many times, and like Chris was saying, I'm sure you've faced them as well. My question is, who are the people that you've pulled onto besides your wife? I mean, I'm sure she's a strong rock that you have, but who are the people that you've pulled onto to help you get through the times of failure, to get through the times that you had issues in personal life or business?
Well, number one, my goal in life is to become a really good repenter, not to chase perfectionism. If I'm going to chase perfectionism, I'm going to be a perfect repenter. So get good at that, because you can turn things around in a minute. It's a decision. We all screw up. As far as who inspires me to take act, look, I have really big goals. And they're not goals. They're why I'm on the earth. And I don't share a lot of this stuff publicly because they're very personal, because you got to protect your big ulterior motive, your big dream, your big destiny, right? So there's a small group of people that I share that stuff with. As far as encouragement, look, I'm driven. I know why I'm here. I mean, so I have a natural motivation. It doesn't mean I don't want to lay in bed sometimes and not get up for a day, because I do. But God himself is my encourager. And then I try to be inspired by people who have already done what it is that I'm trying to do. And that's not on a Facebook forum by watching some little video. It's by reading books of super ultra high achievers in history. Here's the thing about confidence and about getting the courage to move forward, is that you can borrow other people's confidence. You can borrow it. You can use it for a while. And so what you got to do is you got to fill your brain with the actions and the stories of the people who have done what it is that you're trying to do, and go really deep. So I am a massive consumer of information, but it's really specific information. And so I don't even do anything except listen to podcasts all the time. I don't hardly ever listen to music or any of that stuff. I'm constantly learning, constantly being motivated, and borrowing other people's authority, borrowing other people's confidence, as I totally imperfectly try to do stuff. Because that's the path. Look, the path is the same. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. They're not all clear when you're in it, but you can't go to this level until you take care of this, right? Like if you want to scale your business and your financials are a complete disaster, it won't work. Like you got to do this. You can take 10 years to figure that out, or you can take 2 weeks to figure it out. But you got to mirror people who have already done it, and you got to put in the little gross, dirty grunt work stuff that's done in secret, that isn't sexy. You got to get that stuff done. You actually got to know how to lead people. You have to know how to inspire people. You have to know how to hold people accountable. You actually have to be a man of your word. You actually have to be a creative thinker, a problem solver, a salesman, all this stuff. You have to actually be good at this. And I made a video the other day about race, because I wanted to have someone on my podcast and talk about, like, hey, is it harder to be like a Mexican American running a business or being a Black American running a home service company? And I'm sure that it is, and it'll be a fun conversation. But if you suck at business because you're not putting in the work of educating yourself If you can't lead people and sell stuff and you don't understand your pricing and your margin and all the basic business things, and you're a black guy, you're screwed no matter what, right? So then it makes the whole other conversation irrelevant. So, but that's true for all of us. It's step by step. You can't skip ahead. There's not a shortcut. And honestly, that was hard for me because I wanted a shortcut really bad in my early 20s. I was like on all the email lists, the get rich quick here and sign up for the Small Home Business Opportunity magazine there. Like I was that guy trying to figure it out.
And then you realize you had to go to war, right?
Yeah. Well, once you find out your purpose, you stop caring about how hard things are as much. I mean, you'll feel sorry for yourself.
That's right.
A little bit, but how hard things are doesn't matter. Who cares? If you're having a hard time being motivated, there's a good chance it's because you're working on something that you weren't even designed to do in the first place, or you just don't understand what the ultimate outcome of that is for. It has to be something bigger than yourself. I had a coaching call with someone in my boot camp this morning, and we were talking about this, right? Like he was talking about how he's not disciplined. He's like, what do I do? Like I'm motivated, but I also don't do the stuff. And I said, look, because he's going to hire some employees. I said, it's going to get easier as you build your team. Because as men, at least for me, I know that it's easier for me to go to war when other people depend on me other than just myself depending on me. And so the ironic thing is, it's like after I had a team of employees, it was easier for me to be disciplined because I don't want to let them down. I'll oversleep and not go to the gym because it's just me, but I'm not going to let them get their paycheck, right? So sometimes like just going for it is what you need to kind of dial in your discipline and things like that.
You had mentioned something just a second ago, purpose. I have this thing where I say, when you know your purpose, the pain becomes irrelevant. And we all know as entrepreneurs, growing a business can be very painful, but if you put purpose behind it, even marriage, this isn't just for business, marriage can be painful. But if you know the purpose of the marriage, then the pain becomes irrelevant because the purpose is bigger than the pain. I know we got to get going, Gary. You want to wrap it up and we get into the after show and carry it on over there, or you have some more content?
Let's do that. I mean, Josh, we want you to hang out. Guys, thanks for watching. As you know, after show is coming up, so hang out for just a second. We'll end the podcast and bring it over. Josh Latimer, we appreciate you being on the Operation Dominate podcast. You're a true example of how to dominate, and we appreciate you being here. Chris, as always, you're the man. Guys, thanks for watching. We appreciate you. Remember, Fridays, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central. Let's dominate.